from our studios in New York City. This is Charlie Rose.
Alanis Morissette is here. She has had, to say the least, an interesting life marked by change, a quest for perfection, and huge success. Born in Ottawa in 1974, her parents were school teachers. She was by 3 a performer, by 10 a child television star, and at 17 she had made 2 albums, one of which won the Juno for Most Promising Female Vocalist in 1992. In 1994, wanting something more and something different, she goes to Los Angeles. Then, at only 19, she recorded the album Jagged Little Pill. It sold 28 million copies worldwide, the biggest debut album ever and the best-selling album ever recorded by a female singer. It won her 4 Grammys, including Album of the Year and Best Rock Song. It earned her a reputation as the angry young woman of music. You couldn't be higher than she was, except inside her own psyche. She does something very different, something she calls the goddess trip. She takes off for 18 months traveling to India and other places, finding herself in herself and less driven by being Miss Perfect, and she comes back different. Someone said she was transformed from an angry young woman to a nouveau spiritualist. The next album, supposed Former Infatuation Junkie, by design, is different. It sold 7 million copies and gives her a different connection with her audience. Journal entries from her trip became lyrics for her songs, different songs. The sexy anger is replaced by healing and reconciliation, chronicling her search for inner peace. It comes out too late for the Grammys, but she wins 2 more Grammys for Uninvited, her song from the soundtrack for City of Angels, Best Female Rock Performance, and Best Rock Song. Listen to her music, and you hear the evolution of an artist.
And I won't be able to talk for some time. And I understand that as I do you, the long distance thing was the hardest, and we did as well as we could. You've already won me over, in spite of me, and don't be alarmed if I fall head over feet, 'cause I've got one hand in my pocket and the other one is giving up. Lead, you scream, they'll throw out opinions like rocks in riots, and they'll stumble around like hypocrites. Is it just me, or is it dark in here?
The Unplugged from the television special by the same name. She's now in the movies, playing God in Kevin Smith's Dogma, and said to be writing a book. I'm pleased to have her here for the first time. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you.
It's good to be here. It's all funny, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So funny.
I mean, did you see your life unfolding there?
Oh, yes.
Parts of it.
Yes, moments of it.
So what did you think?
I just have to smile. Some of that feels like about 20 years ago, and some of it feels like about 2 minutes ago.
For a woman in her 20s, that says a lot.
Yeah.
It has been, as I said, you know, up and down and around and up and back and all of that, kind of a journey of discovery.
Yeah. Remembering, really. Getting back to the source. I was running away from it for a long time, thinking that I'd find it outside of myself, but I found it by not running anymore, really.
You find it all in yourself in the end, don't you? Everybody, everywhere does that in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many wonderful things that about you that I want to talk about, but the music first and this career. Born in Ottawa, 1974.
74.
Yeah. Parents were both teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How did you get started so young?
I started writing poetry when I was younger. Some of my journal entries were really personal, and as I got more prepared to write songs, I didn't think I was emotionally prepared to be able to write the same kinds of things that I was writing in my journals. So I would write more fiction, particularly when I was 10 years old. I wrote my first song when I was 9, and put a record together when I was 10 years old with a friend of mine, and we shopped for a record deal for 10 minutes, and understandably, I think record companies were a little apprehensive, so I started my own record company with my friend Lindsay.
At what time? At what age?
I was 10.
At 10?
Yeah.
And what kinds of things were you singing?
Well, the first song that I ever wrote was called Fate, Stay With Me, and And the second song I wrote was called Found the Right Man, which I knew nothing about, of course.
Yes. Well, now that's a whole interesting theme we want to get into.
Right.
I mean, you're constantly writing songs about men in your life, either looking for them or men you remember in your life.
Yeah.
Or men who've done you bad.
Quote, unquote. Yes.
I mean, I assume that's just simply because you write what's on your mind and your heart,
Yeah.
what you're feeling at the moment.
I write a lot of what's in my subconscious, and there have been times where I haven't been speaking to these people directly, you know, and not just with men, but in relationships in general. Yeah.
But back then, you were on television a lot as a kid, as a teenager.
Yeah, doing a lot of shows and singing here and there, and different festivals and television acting, did some theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
And so someone said about you, if she'd wanted to be a bricklayer, she would have been the best bricklayer around.
I would have been an earnest bricklayer. I don't know about the best. Yeah.
You would have wanted to be as good as you can.
Yeah.
You know, this whole notion of Miss Perfect that sort of came up about you.
Right. The perfectionism when I was younger. It's funny because the standard changes all the time, so back then it was very confusing about what exactly perfect was.
Yeah.
You know, I had a sense of what it was, but now I realize that I'm already perfect just on a spiritual level. There's no standard to live up to.
So there's no bar you're trying to reach now anymore?
No. I think my motivation these days is to just express myself, and I feel excited by doing it and having whatever the expression manifests into being a real snapshot of that time.
Why did you leave Canada for Los Angeles?
I left Canada because I wanted to go to another country, and I was intimidated by leaving, and I didn't want to go to a country where I didn't know how to speak the language. And I was also enamored with the concept of Hollywood, and enamored/curious about it. And I was afraid, and there was a time in my life, and still an element of it now, where the only things I wanted to do were things that scared me. And it scared me very much, Hollywood.
The only thing you wanted to do were things that scared you? Because it was the only time you felt on the edge?
I felt alive. I felt like I was transcending something, and that I wasn't stuck somewhere.
Where does the drive come from?
I think when I was younger, it was a dual-purpose drive. I think one of it was this urgency to express myself, to define who I was, and that combined with being curious about what fame would bring. I think I was just very curious. I'd heard that your self-esteem would skyrocket, and you would feel self-loving and loved and praised all the time, which as a 10-year-old sounded like a really great idea.
It's one of the greatest lies of all time.
Right, as you probably well know, yes.
I mean, if you're going to find self-esteem through fame and think that that'll make you feel good about yourself, then you're in for a huge shock.
Yeah, it's actually quite the opposite, isn't it?
Well, we'll talk about that because it comes in your life. But so you go to Los Angeles. You arrive, and you find a room, and you're literally writing songs.
Yeah, I start writing with different writers when I first arrived there, much in the same way that I'd been doing in Toronto for a while.
And do they know who you were in Toronto, or are they opened up saying, my God, here comes a future star, or are they saying, show me something, kid?
Oh, you mean in Los Angeles?
Yes.
I don't think any of them did, which I thought was amazing, because then I was able to be seen for who I was in that moment, as opposed to have them have preconceived notions of who I was prior to that. So,
And then you met Glenn.
Yeah.
A turning point almost, huh?
Very big. Very big, because Glenn just provided this environment in which I felt safe and not judged and not told what I should do. And in that kind of environment, there's nothing else to do other than just flourish, you know?
And he had the experience of working with a lot of a producer, Glenn Ballard, I guess, was it? Had worked with Streisand and worked with a lot of very
artists,
successful artists. And so you set out to write songs.
Yeah, and I was sort of set up with him on a conceptual blind date. And
conceptual blind date?
And they said,
you mean
nothing, right.
hang out and see if there's something comes out of this union?
Yeah, I mean, the people that introduced me to him said, well, if nothing else, if no songs come out of this, if nothing else, you'll be compatible as people and you'll have a really enjoyable time. And that was the first step as far as our relationship went. It was great.
And what happened?
I arrived at his house, and I really love yellow, the color yellow, and when I feel connected with people, I always see yellow. And when I walked into his studio, his walls were yellow, and his energy was really accepting and warm and inviting. And we started writing a song within 15 or 20 minutes of having met each other.
Which song?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
There's a song called The Bottom Line that we actually never released. Maybe I will at some point, I have no idea, but it was the beginning of my experiencing what it felt like to have songs channel through me, much in the same way as poetry used to when I was younger, if I can even call it that, but never with songs. It had been much more of a conscious, sometimes even belabored process when I was a teenager, but when I started writing with Glenn and on my own even at that time, it became a very stream of consciousness event.
When did you start putting on paper those songs that made you so famous, that later resulted in selling 28 million albums?
Mid-1994?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the tail end
So you
of it.
hadn't been there long when you started putting those songs on paper.
Yeah, pretty much right away when I got there. And
How do you write? I mean, do you go through some emotional moment in which you, or is it much more studied and serious and workmanlike?
it's a bit of both. I think it's inspiration meeting a slight amount of discipline in that I would set aside a day that I would want to write. And the music and the lyrics come at the same time. They're oftentimes written all within 20 or 30 minutes.
When did You Ought to Know come along?
I think that was about midway through the record. I'd written what I call interim songs, songs that I write between records that I'm not necessarily wanting to share with everybody, but just writing it for myself. And I'd written about 10 of those songs that we had shared with some record companies and people, but I didn't intuitively feel quite ready yet until we started writing songs like You Ought to Know and All I Really Want.
Did you know what it would do? I mean, was there a sense that when you'd written it and when you had performed it, that this was the song that would...
Evolution and growth with suffering, and I was suffering all of the time, and I felt like that was the only way that I could be close to God and growing and an artist, and so...
To be suffering?
To be suffering. So...
I hope that's wrong, too, but...
Well, it no longer applies to my life now, thankfully, but it very much did then.
But in tears, it all came out.
Yeah, it did. It'll come out when I'm crying or when I'm laughing. It comes out in all kinds of different moments.
But it's a moment of emotion. And
yeah, or contemplation even. Sometimes I can be extremely detached and write about something with such clarity. It depends.
The stunning thing about the album, beyond the sales, is that there were so many songs that became singles.
Yeah.
There were hits.
Yeah.
What was it like for you at that time? I mean, all of a sudden, all the things that you thought about when you were 10, you had in spades.
Right.
It was a big seller. You were heralded as the best, the greatest, the most whatever.
It was exciting and horrifying all at the same time. I think when it first happened, I was shocked and numb.
And loving it.
And loving it. It was really exciting. I was meeting all these people and traveling and playing music and touring and sweating and running around. It was thrilling on a certain level. Yeah.
How long did that last?
About 5 or 6 months.
Everybody wanted to meet you. Everybody wanted to hear you.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to talk to you. Everybody wanted to talk about future projects.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, some of that was amazing, but there was so much stimuli at that time that I shut down a little bit. I just put my hair in my face and looked down and shut everyone out, including my friends and family, for a while.
Why?
Self-protection. I was going to implode.
You were.
There was so much illusion and intensity and want and urgency and sadness, and I just was very confused by it all, and equally felt so blessed to be able to do what I was doing. I mean, there was no lack of gratitude, but there was certainly a lack of understanding of what exactly was going on.
Do you love being on stage? Did you then?
Yeah, I love it for different reasons maybe than maybe more obvious. I love it because I'm expressing myself and because I see people defining who they are in accordance to what it is that I'm singing, whether it be by jumping out of their own skin, or whether it be by hating it or whatever it is that they feel when they hear what I sing.
And what 28 million albums are worldwide, you know, the biggest release ever for a debut album, according to people who seem to know those kinds of things. Heralded, you know. What was it about that music that resonated with so many people, you think?
I have no idea on a certain level. I think from what I've heard, a lot of people saw themselves in what I was writing about, and I was writing about parts of myself that I hadn't felt I was able to share prior to having written the record. And when I did that, I think some people saw their own stories in mine, and it made me and them at the same time, I think, feel heartened that we weren't alone in our confusion. That may be part of it anyway.
There is these two things. On the one hand, there was this young woman out of Canada, you know, who wanted fame, who had worked hard to achieve it. Anybody who's 10 and sends off songs to record an album, you know, has a certain sophistication, a certain maturity, a certain energy, a certain design, a certain sense of, I make my own breaks, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, there is this other part of you which is writing these things deeply within your heart that are touching lots of people who feel like, you know, she says something that connects to who I am and what I believe and what I feel.
Yeah. I think as soon as 1995 was over, so was a lot of the illusion that had slightly fueled my ambition, for lack of a better term, when I was younger, which is great.
Yeah. So only by going there can you understand that it's not all that it's said to be, depending on what you expected from it.
Absolutely.
Did you think of yourself as they often described you, as an angry young woman?
No. I mean, anyone who knew me really well laughed at it, you know. But certainly I had no qualms with my anger. I thought that, I thought for a long time that my anger was actually an amazing way for me to move forward. Obviously not anger that resulted in my being destructive or hurting anyone, but admitting my anger allowed me to move through it in a way that I hadn't been able to if I repressed it for so long. I felt so much anger in me for so many reasons, and I, out of respect for other people, essentially, I wouldn't express it, you know, but I wasn't allowing my soul to speak. And it did, especially in Jagged Little Pill.
Your soul spoke, and anger came out. You have been fascinated by psychology and therapy for a long time. Still are, I guess.
Yeah, a little bit less nowadays. Yeah.
Did it help you in terms of expressing what was in you, to being able to put it in song?
Definitely. There was an element of my understanding and embracing psychology to the extent that I did that resulted in my intellectualizing a lot of things and allowing myself to understand my human condition, if nothing else, my story.
Just looking back on that period, do you think your gifts were more as a performer or as a songwriter? I mean, that what you really had was that you were a songwriter who could write great lyrics, and the performing was just simply an extension of that.
I think they're all gifts, really. I feel blessed to be able to have a voice. I'm humbled by it. I can't even believe sometimes the sounds that come out of my mouth. I feel so amazed by it. And to play live and to be physical and to write these songs, which to me are like conversations, you know, the same place that my words are coming from right now is the same place my songs come from.
From your inside. Yeah. They were also sexual, reflecting a sensuality, a sense of caring about that whole aspect of humankind.
Yeah, it's a big part of me.
What went wrong? Why did you say, I don't want this? I need a break. I need to get away.
Yeah.
Everybody dreams of this, and I've had enough after 6 months.
Yeah. Well, I did stop after 6 months.
I know. Well, however long it was.
But after the tour.
Yeah.
Well, everything
the tour should have been the icing on the cake.
Yeah, on a certain level it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, proverbial icing. After the tour, I was just physically drained as well, and I just needed to be able to step back and see who I was again, and see what I believed, and question my own spirituality, my own take on society and politics, and my culture and other cultures and people, and I just really wanted to be able to step away and see who I was in the midst of all of it, and define what I thought was an illusion and what wasn't, and then I realized that it was all an illusion.
Well, but you said something interesting there, just defining your own spirituality. You've always been in search of some kind of what's spirituality about,
Yeah.
even to this day.
Not so much searching anymore.
You found it,
Yeah.
but then even when you left Ottawa, part
Yeah.
of that was about, I mean, you pretty much cut all sort of sense of religious bonds. I mean, you said, what?
I said Catholicism didn't feel right for me anymore. I've been brought up Catholic, and,
Right.
and I threw the God baby out with the bathwater, unfortunately, because it wasn't so much God that I wanted to step away from or reinvestigate. It was my religion, and religion in general, a religion that taught me that I was being judged by God, and I don't believe God to be someone or something that judges us. So I needed to step away, and unfortunately there was a void for a while because I didn't feel very connected to God at all for a while because of my having stepped away from Catholicism for a minute or two.
But even more interesting is that there is always about you, there has been this questioning, you know? I mean, I find these wonderful, interesting traits about you that you are driven, yet at the same time you're questioning, you know? At the same time you're desirous of something, you're asking, is this all there is? You
Right.
know? There is this looking for experience, answers, figuring it out, you know? You pursue it with incomparable energy and demand because you're asking questions about it.
Yeah, definite questions. And now I think the desire, if I can even call it that, the inspiration is to experience,
Just to enjoy the experience.
Yeah,
Yeah, to enjoy it more than come to.
yeah. There's nothing to find in it
Yeah.
as such.
So you decide to take a trip.
Yeah.
You want to take 18 months off.
Yeah.
You know, were you scared about that? I mean, you know, I may come back here and nobody will care.
I was
They'll have
petrified.
forgotten about me.
I was
I've got
very
one album out
afraid.
there, folks. I mean, may have sold $28 million, 28 million albums, but
Right.
if I go away, they may forget about me.
I wasn't really worried about that. I think I was more worried about dying because all I had ever known in my life was productivity, achievement, you know, grasping, running, searching, finding, seeking, all of these things. That was what my life was about. And so to have sought and to have found that the ultimate was not the ultimate, whether it be fame or financial status that was different or praise or whatever it was, when I realized that was an illusion and that was what a lot of my life had been based on, that was what was scary. And stopping, I had been used to kinetic energy and stimuli so much that the concept of stopping in silence, for that matter, was terrifying to me, and I felt like I died.
You placed a call at one point to Mother Teresa.
Yeah, I called her the night before she died, actually. I called her over in Calcutta because I really wanted to be of service and go to the missionary over there. And I had been wanting to do that for a long time, and I still do all the time. Be of service in a way that I hadn't been able to, perhaps, as a young person who was a little egocentric and trying to figure herself out. I don't think I had the energy to do it.
So you called.
So I called.
And they said, somebody the other end answers. I mean, somebody once said to me that one of the virtues of being famous is that you can get anybody on the phone that you want to.
Right.
So you do reach her place.
I reached her place.
And they are and they say, would you like to talk to her?
Yes, I found out all the information
Yeah.
about where to go and how to go and where to stay. And then they said, would you like to speak with her now? We'll get her to the phone, because I guess she had been anticipating my call, potentially. I have no idea.
Somebody had explained to her who you were.
I think. I have no idea.
I'm sure.
Maybe. And there was a split second where I thought, my speaking to her at this point would be solely for ego reasons. And so I said, no, I'm presuming she must be tired, because I had heard she'd been under the weather. And I said, it's okay, I don't need to speak to her, I'll be coming over soon. And the next morning I woke up and she had died.
And you felt what?
I just felt love for her and everyone that was sad because she was gone from the physical plane, and I was convinced that I had to go to India. Yeah.
So India became the place to head to.
Mm-hmm.
And so you gathered some friends,
Mm-hmm.
family,
Yeah.
people you knew.
Mm-hmm. It was my Christmas gift to them, and we landed in Calcutta, and I find it hilarious because one of my aunts had never left Ottawa. In the first place, her responsible
It's not New York or
takes
Los
her
Angeles or
is Calcutta.
Montreal or Toronto, you know.
That's right. So we went to Calcutta, and we worked in the missions there for a little bit of time, and then we went up north, and then I traveled further into Nepal and down south in India and did some yoga with my brother.
Keeping notes and journals all along.
Yeah, and just reading and being alive and human and not famous.
How was this different for you? What was great about it?
It was really simple.
Yeah.
You know,
You didn't have to be anything but yourself.
Yeah.
Nobody expected you to perform.
Yeah, I didn't have to perform.
Pretty good, huh? You've been
Great.
performing all your life.
Yeah, it was really great. It was probably more difficult, I think. And I also couldn't run away from conflict. I had gotten away with running away from conflict, but when you travel with people in close quarters like that, you can't get away with it, which was brilliant.
Yeah. You're coming to some very simple truths, aren't you?
Yes.
Fame isn't all that it's set out to be.
Yeah.
And two, you can't run away from things.
No, you
At
can't.
some point, you can't. You have to stop and say, let's figure this out.
Yeah, let's just stop.
Let's just stop.
And then you laugh.
Yes. It's not, you know. So what conclusions were you coming to about everything?
I came to the conclusion that God was beautiful. And that...
You weren't angry at God.
No. And I felt very responsible for my own life. I felt like the creator of my own life. And I felt like there wasn't something that was happening to me. These things weren't happening to me. These were things that were manifested from what I had thought my whole life. These were my own creations, and I felt blessed. I did. I felt so grateful. I feel like that was one of the first results of my stopping, was this huge amount of compassion and gratitude that I was overwhelmed with. And the challenge for me then was to return to the lifestyle that I had left and see if I could integrate that.
And you found out what?
I found that it was a challenge, and that I could do it.
This is now about 1996, isn't it? We're almost at 97.
97.
97.
Yeah.
So we're now in 97, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And you come back.
Yes.
Yeah. Probably the best trip you've ever taken in your life because of what you found out.
Yeah.
And you decide to do what? You go back to L.A.?
I went back to L.A., and when I first got home, I was meditating every day for hours and hours and hours, and there was no greater love. There was no greater bliss that I can even imagine or
Really?
describe.
From meditation?
Just being was pretty, and is pretty amazing.
You knew the following thing about the music business, because you're certainly wise about that what they're expecting from you and what they're hoping from you is another jagged little pill. Hard rock, that's what you have been defined as. And there you're coming back, and you're recording songs that a different speed, different tempo, for the most part, and more introspective, more about healing and reconciliation, as I said, correct? And you know you're taking a risk, don't you?
On a certain level, I suppose I knew it, but I couldn't even consider doing anything other than what was going to be written and where I was at.
Yeah. There was no part of you. In fact, you said once to Glenn, we can't do the same thing sideways.
Well, we didn't even need to talk about it, actually. Glenn and I, at the time when we went back into the studio, there wasn't really much to say.
Yeah, I'm just not there. That was a snapshot at that time. I kind of posed.
Yeah. There's no reason to recreate something. Let's just get this present moment down on tape if we can.
Yeah. But the first album that sold 28 million had been fueled by a lot of radio play for lots of those songs, and people would hear them and want to go out and buy the album, right? For a whole series of those songs. And the same radio people are saying, hello? This is not the Alanis we knew, right?
Yeah, and some people were thrilled that there was evolution that was obvious, and others, I'm sure, weren't.
Yeah.
And
you said, I got to be me.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's what you said. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, no matter what I have ever created since as far back as I can remember, there have been people that have loved it and hated it and everything in between, and that probably won't change.
Do I hear you saying I wouldn't do it differently at all? I was on my journey. I had to go to these mountains, and I realized that you can't duplicate one thing, and if I could have, I wouldn't want to, and I realized that success is defined in lots of ways, not just 28 million albums, to repeat it for the 15th time. You know, that is defined by who I am and where I am, and I've made all the money that I ever imagined making, you know, and I ought to just be true to myself and find a space that I like.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Right?
Yeah.
So you put these songs together. Define and characterize what they were.
These songs, Unsupposed?
Yeah.
Wow, I don't even remember them right now.
Right.
They were everything. There were so many different layers. Sometimes
we're not talking about a long time ago. This is
No.
last year.
It was earlier last year.
98, and 98 they came out.
98, yeah. Wow. They were moments of gratitude and moments of the struggle. As I evolve, there's always a letting go of what I once believed, and I sing a lot about that. I sing a lot about relationships and clarity and validation, and still some anger, I guess, a little bit.
About
Different environments. When I'm in environments, when I have been in environments that were really judgmental and very cruel, I'm still at a point where that angered me. So I wrote about it.
where are you now?
Right here.
Yeah, I know. That's good. And
Sorry.
I'm pleased about that. But you were in an okay place. I mean, you now have this MTV Unplugged, but this is a whole range of things in here.
Yeah.
Right.
It's everything. Just allowing it to be that, realizing that I'm not my emotions and I'm not even my behavior. My essence is not my behavior. And oftentimes my behavior is a manifestation of a misunderstanding of what my true essence is, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And what are we going to see? I mean, someone said to me or I read about you, you know, that there was, you know, that they expected to see a lot of psychobabble and that kind of stuff. I don't hear that from you at all. I mean, it seems to me that everything that you say sounds perfectly reasonable in terms of what a young person might go through in terms of a life.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't hear a lot of sort of words that I hear from people who've been in therapy and have come out at the other end with sort of mouthing the words of the therapist.
Right. I think therapy's brilliant, as are so many other things that I've realized, and I think it's all part of it, you know.
Listen to this. This is from this album, Unplugged Performance, Baba. Take a look and we'll talk more. Here it is.
I watched this experience raise them to pseudo higher levels. I watched them leave their families in pursuit of your nirvana. I've seen them coming to line up from Switzerland and America. How long will this take, Baba? How long have we been sleeping? Do you see me hanging on to every word you say? How soon will I be hurting? How much will this cost you? How much longer till you completely unsolve me?
Well, we also have a live performance here that you did for us earlier, which we'll see at the end of this. Tell me about that before I...
We performed that I Would Be Good with Nick Lashley,
Yeah.
who I've played with for many years. And the song, I actually wrote it in my closet.
I'm sorry?
I wrote it in my closet.
Because it was dark in there, or what?
It was dark, and I've lived alone since I moved out of my parents' house. I've lived alone for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles and Toronto. And for a minute or two, I had some roommates living with me, and I can't write when there's a lot of noise, and so I didn't want to kick them out of my house. So I went into my closet and wrote those lyrics.
So you're sitting in there with pen and pencil, or with the...
With my paper and my candle and my paper. And I felt a little bit pressured time-wise, I think, in the midst of writing Supposed. And so Glenn just said, see you later. I said, okay, bye.
Yeah.
I'll come back when I'm not feeling pressured. And so I went away for a few days and wrote That I Would Be Good and ran back to the studio.
This collaboration has worked, hasn't it, with Glenn?
It's been great.
You know, I mean, you two seem to... Here's a perfect example. He understands where you are, and he gives you your distance and says, you know, write it. Right?
One of my first examples of healthy relationships, definitely. Yeah.
One of your first exampls of a healthy relationship.
And I'm taking responsibility for that. It wasn't,
Yeah.
wasn't everybody else for those years before.
Now, why are relationships hard for you?
They're not as hard. They're actually really a lot simpler these days, thankfully.
Yeah.
I just misunderstood what love was.
Really?
I thought love meant need and this, and, sort of doing things for each other and helping each other all the time. And while there's an element of that being in a really loving relationship, as I now see it, I don't equate love with need anymore at all.
Or you equate it with what?
Just the verb love.
Yeah.
Like you see someone's spirit and who they are and their humanness and their adorableness, and you love them in a verb. And I don't see any requirements in that. It's very unconditional.
You also, now, people can see your face now.
Yeah.
You're less hiding.
Yes. Yeah.
And what about this sort of journey away from the church? Have you come halfway back, or is it just simply you've come back to spirituality rather than to the church?
Coming back to spirituality, definitely. And love the church as. Love religions. They're beautiful and inspiring, and some of it isn't at all inspiring, and some of it is saddening to me. But I'm definitely back to spirituality. Yeah.
Are you directing your own music videos?
Some of them, yeah.
You are? You directed which ones?
So Pure and Unsent, and Head Over Feet. We did a couple of live versions of You. We did live version of You Learn. And some I co-directed, and others I had nothing to do with.
The inspiration for the one in which we see you sort of walking around nude.
Right, yeah.
Came from being in the shower saying,
what is this song about? And what does it want to be visually? And reached a point in my life where I didn't objectify my body anymore and saw it as an instrument rather than the ornament that it had been purported to be for so long, and wanted to express that. And Stefan said, no, he directed that one.
I'm sorry?
Stefan said, no, he directed that one. Yeah, I didn't direct that one.
This is another thing from the MTV Unplugged. Prince's Familiar from MTV Unplugged. Roll tape.
Please be the jerk of my knee. I fit you always. You finish my sentences. I think I love you. What is your name again? No matter. I'm guessing your thoughts again correctly. And I love the way you press my buttons. So much sometimes I could strangle. So she will find funny princess familiar. Papa respect your princess, so she will find respectful princess familiar. Papa love your princess, so she will find loving princess familiar. Papa cry for your princess, so she will find gentle princess familiar. La 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 la. strangely enigmatic. Please be just like mine.
Where you were in Dogma, you're as God.
Yes.
And reservations about that? I mean, is there some irony about that?
Oh, it's hilarious. Well, the movie's so brilliant and funny, and I read the script and I just loved it. So
This is Ben Affleck and Matt Damon and Chris Rock and Kevin Smith is the director, and you play God. Chris Rock plays the 13th apostle.
yes, he was great in it.
Matt and Ben play a couple of angels that have kicked out of heaven, and they have to go live in Wisconsin, is it?
In Rome.
In Rome. Yeah. You like movies?
I love them.
You do? You think about movies as a career?
Yeah, I love directing.
Watch out, since you only get what you want. This could be... You'd love to direct rather than perform?
I love performing as well. I think if it was something that I resonated with, there is such a charm for me to be able to dive into someone else's vision and be of service to them on a creative level and then step away and have it be theirs. I feel like a student in those environments, and I love that as much. But I love directing too and writing.
Are you going to be in another movie soon, or are you going to be involved in another movie soon?
Probably. I have nothing, no rush right now.
You know, do you have any sense of urgency about anything now?
Excitement, certainly. Not urgency.
Excitement about?
About the experience, about being on a movie set, or about writing something, about creating another record, about
There's some
producing.
talk about writing a book, either a kind of quasi-memoir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
kind of a memoir. Little
A kind of memoir.
non sequitur book is what I like to call it. Yeah.
Are you writing it now? Are you trying to put it down?
Yeah, I've
In the closet or
elements
out of the
it.
closet?
Both. depending upon
on
who's
the
in
mood.
the house.
That's right, depending on who's in the house. Yeah.
right.
So people still living in the house?
No, I live on my own again.
You do?
Yeah.
You like that better?
I do. I really love my space, and I love inviting people in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but do you want a man there?
Sometimes a man's there, and sometimes a man's not there, and
Yeah.
they're both good
They're
situations.
both okay.
Yes.
As long as you have your space, you'll be all right.
Yeah, as long as I can get it.
How often do you write songs? I mean, do you constantly, when you're inspired and moved, you put it down? Put it in the drawer somewhere?
Yeah, I have pieces of paper with thoughts and words and anecdotes on it everywhere around my house.
Didn't you once say that you'd like to re-release those early albums that have never sort of been released in America?
Yeah, I probably will at some point. Yeah, definitely.
What would the next album be like? I mean, will it be some kind of combination of all these experiences, or will it be something totally new, not like Infatuation or Pill?
It'll be stretched. It'll be. I always love to stretch and try new instruments, and it'll always be a snapshot of where I'm at emotionally and spiritually and what I've experienced. And I've traveled around the world for the last 16 months on tour, so I've been to these amazing places and immersed myself in these cultures as much as I can in the short amount of time.
Are the audiences different than they were the first tour?
Yeah.
Older?
Some are older, and then some shows reminded me exactly of 1995, so it really depended where I was, really.
Smaller venues?
Some smaller, some bigger. Bit of everything. One night we'll play, a 200-seater, and the next night we'll play a few thousand.
And how, in the performances and the tour is always a combination of everything, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's not just MTV Unplugged, it's not just the first album or the second album.
Yeah. You mean song-wise?
Yeah,
what we
song-wise.
do? We do everything.
Can you give a performance without performing You Ought to Know?
Sure.
Do you?
Yeah.
You do? They don't demand it?
I don't know if they do.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
they do.
one of the phenomenons for you was, as you began to tour, as I remember, as you would, everybody knew the words.
Yeah.
That's got to be.
It was beautiful. It was helpful, too, because sometimes I didn't.
No prompter around, huh?
Yeah, they very much helped me out sometimes.
Because
But
you've forgotten the words?
Oh, yes. Do it all the time. Just ask my monitor engineer. He will bust my chops
Now,
constantly.
how do they remind you?
by singing it.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
Well, backstage, just sing it for you.
No.
Oh, I'm talking about the audience.
The audience was
Yeah.
singing. There was one time where Vince, my guitar technician, actually helped me out with the words to Uninvited because I completely forgot them. I went to the side of the
That's
stage.
a pretty
and
big
he told
song.
me. Yeah.
And you forgot the words?
You know, those times when you forget how to spell words like walk or does.
Yeah.
That was one of those times.
That's the last song on this album.
Right. And I remember the words. That
You
day,
did here?
Apparently, yes.
Do live performances have all the thrill that they had for you?
Oh, yeah. It's different. I feel much calmer on stage now. When I first started touring in 1995, I felt like I was in a fishbowl. And even the way in which I performed, I felt protected me, and it kept people at arm's length. And on a certain level, I guess it was convenient then, but I feel much more comfortable in my own skin on stage now.
You record with Maverick, which is Madonna's record album.
Mm-hmm.
She once said when you were younger, in 95, you reminded her of herself at that age.
Yeah, she did say that.
And today, you think you'd remind her of her at another age?
I don't know. I'd have to ask her. Maybe.
You're not close, or you are close, or?
Much love and respect. I actually don't spend a lot of time with her, though.
Yeah.
I'm kind of
What songwriter or singer would you most inspires you the most, informs you the most?
There's so many. I love R.E.M., who you had in here.
Michael,
who's awesome. And people like Chris Cornell and Jason Faulkner and Carole King, and I love Fiona Apple, and I love women and men and artists that just channel and go.
people have compared your work to Tapestry as well.
Wow. Yeah, she's amazing, Carole King. I remember her voice being the first voice when I was really little that made me feel like she was a relative of sorts. I remember when I was really little, I used to really respond to her.
Thank you. Pleasure very much. Alanis Morissette coming up next. We conclude with a performance. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.
That I would be good, even if I did nothing. That I would be good, even if I got the thumbs down. That I would be good if I got and stayed sick. That I would be good even if I gained 10 pounds. That I would be fine even if I went bankrupt. That I would be good if I lost my hair and my youth. That I would be great if I was no longer queen. That I would be grand if I was not on a wing. That I would be